Hello everyone, I'm very pleased to have this opportunity to give this presentation today. The title of my presentation is Universal Design for Learning in Higher Education, Beliefs Among the Students of Two Foreign Language Departments. First, I will concentrate on the terms beliefs and its relationship with action in the educational field, before moving on to present universal design for learning frameworks. Lastly, I will introduce my questionnaire for students based on the Universal Design for Learning guidelines and its first result. Let's start by looking on the terms beliefs. So, what are beliefs? According to Dolman, beliefs in general can be influenced by several elements such as personal experiences, learning experiences, or practical experiences, as well as by someone else's beliefs. And normally they are held to be true. There are a lot of different definition of beliefs. Let's see some definition in educational field. For example, according to Philip, he tried to distinguish the term beliefs from other terms like attitudes and emotion, because normally beliefs are related with these terms. So, according to him, to distinguish these terms, there are three variables: so stability, cognitive structure, and level of intensity. What Philip says is that attitudes can change more slowly than emotion, but they can change more quickly than beliefs. So attitudes are more cognitive than emotions, but less cognitive than beliefs. Attitudes, like emotion, may involve positive or negative feelings, but they are felt with less intensity than emotion, and beliefs are felt less intensely than attitudes. So the difference among these terms, it's related with these three variables. So in the last decades, beliefs have gained a place in the educational field, as we can see in this model of professional teacher competencies, according to Baumert and Kunter. According to them, the three, in fact, are the teacher competencies. So the main teacher competencies: knowledge, personal characteristic, and finally values and attitude and beliefs. So beliefs are part of teacher competencies. In fact, according to Buell and Rose, Phoebus and Buell, beliefs have three different functions. So they can be considered as filters, they can for interpretation, they can be so they can influence the interpretation of situation, they can be frames for defining problems and tasks, and they can be action guiding. Let's do an example. For example, if a faculty has a positive beliefs towards the promotion of heterogeneous classes, that's like the filter, the strengths and the weakness of each student are taken in consideration, and that's the frame, and the faculty try to reach them with his or her teaching. In that way, the faculty will meet students' need and their uniqueness, and these beliefs guide his or her teaching methods. So let's move on the second point. Second point is the presentation of Universal Design for Learning framework. Universal Design for, it's important to say that Universal Design for Learning is based on the concept of universal design, concept based in the in the architecture field with architecture Ronald Mage. The seven principle of universal design was why Anne Meyer and David Rose. They were the founder of Universal Design for Learning framework, and they were the founder of CAST. So CAST is the Center for Applied Special Technology, so an educational research and development, an educational research organization. The model of universal design for learning is based on one concept, on a main concept that no one size fits all. That means that there is no any average students, and what is important is that UDL enabled the implementation of the principle of personalization. In fact, the other principle of the other guideline of universal design for learning are variability in learning process and flexibility in teaching and learning. What is important to say is that also universal design for learning is based on neuroscience research. According to the scientists, the brain is very complex, and we know that. But we can say that we can simplify the brain in three areas, in three networks that are relevant for learning. The first network is the recognition network that acquires and recognizes information. That means that they make information available for other network, and they are situated in the back of the brain, and we activated them unconsciously every time that we are ready to take information from our environment, from external environment. The strategic network, the second one, process and provide information. So the second network are located in the front part of the brain and allow us to face complex problems. While the recognition network gain the external information, the strategic networks take this information and select them, order them, and spread this information in our environment. The last one is the affective networks that is involved in the emotional processing of information. The most part of this network is located in the center of the brain. They bring together information processed by the two other networks and set priorities based on our interest, memories, and emotion. So they can act in two ways, like they can act as a restraint when we have a positive memories, emotion, or what else, and it can act as a motivator. They can act as a motivator if we have a positive memories or a positive experience of a fact or of something. So what is crucial to understand is that each brain is like a fingerprint, so it's unique. And the variability is in fact a dominant feature of our nervous system. The concept of neurovariability is important for educators because it reminds us that learners do not have an isolated learning style, but instead rely on many parts of the brain working together to function within a given context. So there is no single way a brain will perceive, engage with, or execute a task. Variability is not just important consideration for thinking about difference between students, but also within students in different contexts, because the context is related to the affective network, and it's like maybe the most important part. Based on these three networks, Anne Rose and David Mayer, they evolved the the three basic principle of universal design for learning. And the first is the what of learning. So mm, the the what of learning, so the presentation, and which aligns with the recognition networks. Then we have action and movements, the how of learning, which aligns with the strategic networks. We have said that the strategic network order the information, spread information, and then the engagement. That's the why of learning, why we learn, or why we learn one thing instead of another, and because it's related to the affective networks. And so it depends on our interest, effort, persistence, and self regulation. These three principles helps educators address the predictable variability in learning that we know will be present in any environment. What they have done is to take these three principles, and Ellen and David Rose, they split it, this principle in different checkpoints, as the table shows. That's, you can find it in the on the web UDL website, and it's normally translated in different languages. So now let's move on the last part of my presentation. So the questionnaire for students. After talking, before I've talked about beliefs, I've talked about universal design because they are in my questionnaire. So my questionnaire is based on these guidelines, and it's based on the what I want to do with my questionnaire. So the main goal is to compare the beliefs with action, to see if there is differences or with the students' beliefs and faculty actions. So let's see the structure of my questionnaire. So as you can see in the first slide, that's part of my questionnaire. That's one of the statements. There are 64 variables, so 64 statements, and they are divided into different Likert scales. So there are basically 32 statements based on the universal design for learning, but for each statement there is what is your, what would you think, das ist meine Meinung, and what your faculty do, your faculties do. So that's the second part. For this reason there are two different Likert scales, one for beliefs and one for action. The variables, so the statement, are divided in four groups. The first groups is adjustment for students with augmented disability. Then we have inclusive learning materials for students with and without disabilities, inclusive courses design and assessment for students with and without disabilities, and then we have inclusive use of language for students with and without disability. In this case I intended so the language that normally is taught in university, like Italian in Italy and German in Germany. And I do not want to speak about the first language or the the first language, because it could be also not the first language of the students, because we know that there are always more heterogeneous classes, but it's like the most used language during the classes. And after the four groups, so what I've done, so I have taken, let's as I've said, that main goal of my questionnaire is to analyze students' beliefs about inclusive learning and teaching, and comparing them with the real action of faculties. The participants are foreign language students. They are 202 or 99 from German University, so the Pädagogische Hochschule Karlsruhe, and 103 from Università degli Studi Gabriele D'Annunzio in Italy. So the university, like I've said, there are two, and the foreign languages taken in consideration are English, German, French, and Italian, because of my foreign language knowledge, and because of because of I've talked with my tutor, and they are from German, they are from Italy, they are from French, so I have three tutor in my PhD, and we decide to use these languages, these foreign languages. So let's talk about now the results. So what I've done, I've developed the questionnaires on with an online survey tool, that's Slime Survey, and I've sent them to the students. After that, I recollect all the results, and I've done t-test, and I've compared the mean score of the beliefs and action subscales across the Italian and German sample. So as we can see, that's the t-test beliefs scale among students from Italy and students from Germany. The tables say that there are slightly statistically different in that. According to the table, the first three subscales are more or less the same, so they consider positive the statement. So they consider positive the inclusive measurement. The last subscales, so inclusive use of first language for students with and without disability, there is a slightly differences. We can say that the Italian group see this use of the first language, or the language used in the university, positively, but the German students are more doubtful. What we can see, so what the main difference is from the beliefs and then the action. As we can see, the mean is less than the beliefs means. That means that at one end, the students thinks that they can be useful, but on the other end, teachers, so faculties, use rarely or hardly ever this inclusive measurement, and we can see that there is no difference between the German faculties and the Italian faculties in the first subgroups, but there is a difference, so difference in the last three groups. We can see that the Italian faculties use more than the German faculties the inclusive measurement. I cannot say why, because it will I need more data, but it will be interesting to do to interview also the faculties, and that will be my next step. So we are at the end of my presentation. So I will thank you for your attention, and if you have any question or suggestion, do not hesitate to contact me. Thank you.